Okay, it's been a week where I felt like a slug trying to make its way through a yarn barf. Can you picture that? I don't know that I want to picture that. But that is what this week has felt like. Like it started off Friday, I was faced with the idea of going up to Flagstaff and enjoying the cool weather and the pines and everything like that. And it just hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, I can't do this right now. I can't, like, I don't know whether it was a wave of depression and anxiety. I don't know what it was, but I just got to the point where I could not go. And told my husband I couldn't go. We had a big long discussion about the fact that I couldn't go. And I just stayed home and vegged. And the rest of the week, I've been sort of almost trying to get my Crojo back because I finally finished this amazing top and just couldn't figure out what I wanted to start next. I was like, ugh. And so I'd start something and I'd work with it, and then, nope, this isn't feeling right. And so I'd start something else and I'd work with it, and nope, that wasn't feeling right. Tell me you can relate to this, because I was just sort of, you know, I couldn't get anything going. And I know that I've been there before, so fortunately, I also know that that is a temporary situation. And I do think that for me personally, anyway, a lot of that has to do with the fact that because my husband has been home recovering from surgery and not able to go out and do the things that he normally does, and we both, neither one of us has a job outside of the house, so we are together a lot. I've had no sort of me time where it's just me. And he took off on Saturday or Sunday, I think it was, and went and did something for the whole day. And so I had the whole day just to myself. I could veg out, watch whatever I wanted on Netflix, do a little crochet, get up and do this, do whatever, and have no sort of obligation whatsoever. Nobody to think about, nobody to take care of. It was all about me. And I think that really recharged my battery a lot. I am just one of those introverts that, while I can be a very socially outgoing person, my battery is only recharged when it is just me. Me. Nobody else. And that doesn't mean me in my craft room / office all by myself while there are other people outside. It is me having the entire space where I can walk out to the bathroom or to the kitchen or to the living room or wherever I want to go and not worry about, is somebody going to ask me a question? Do you get that? Are you that kind of an introvert? Like, you can totally be outgoing and social and have a great conversation, but when it comes to recharging that battery, it really needs to be done in isolation. Fortunately, I think the tide is shifting and that slug is making its way through the yarn barf, and all of the tangles are becoming untangled, and we are taking a deep breath and moving on. Yay! So, let's see what we have been working on this week, which obviously wasn't much, but I did finish this. And I know as of the recording last week, I had not quite finished this. And that was part of that, like, oh, I really wanted to be done before I went on the trip, and then I wasn't, and I was like, when you're sort of at a crochet group, you need to have a project that's totally mindless, that you're not counting stitches or trying to figure things out. And I didn't have that, and it was just like, so many roadblocks right now are getting in my way, and too many. And so it was creating all this overwhelm. So I know I talked a little bit about this last week, and I'm going to finish up sharing what I've done to sort of modify it, just so that you can kind of make those decisions on your own and see if you want to modify certain patterns. This was very loosely inspired by the Sweet Summer Tea by Evelyn and Peter, and I made a few modifications, actually quite a few modifications. First of all, hers used a DK weight yarn, and I used a fingering weight, the Rococo by Hobie, which I showed you last week, and I am absolutely in love with that yarn. I did not get gauge, so I modified the size of it, and I based it on measure instead of what the actual gauge would be. Sometimes for some patterns you can actually get away with that, and you just look at what the measurement is supposed to be. And so if it gives you that measurement and it says, okay, within this, this is what your finished product should be. It should be about 24 inches. Well, I have a 42-inch waist, so 24 inches would give me a 48-inch result. The next size down would be give me a 42-inch result. I don't want any ease, so I can kind of take some of those factors and play around with the math a little bit. Now, I am not by any means an expert on sort of modifying these gauge sort of things and modifying patterns. I'm kind of winging it. And if you learn something from what I'm doing to wing it and you can take that and use it for yourself, that is awesome. But don't take my word as gospel, because I am by no means the expert. I have not been crocheting garments long enough to know all of these variables. I just know what works for me. And so in this case, I took my gauge and I said, okay, this is how wide I want it to be. So I'm going to make it this wide and then modify from there. And that worked perfectly. I didn't want mine as loose. I didn't want as much of a positive ease as hers had. So I measured it based on her medium size when normally I would go with the large size. And everything on the sizing worked out beautifully with the thinner yarn and the different gauge and all of that good stuff. So I got a little bit lucky there. The other modification, one of the others that I did, was I added this collar, and I've never done a collar before, but this pattern really lent itself to a collar. And all I did was I slip stitched on to where the collar would, this pattern, it kind of does the V up and then it kind of goes around like that. So it kind of goes up and then curves around. So where it stops going up and starts to curve, that's where I attached on, and I just did the same stitch, which I believe was a half double crochet, around, did an increase, and then went around, and then did an increase, and then went around and did an increase. And so I just kept doing that until it was the width that I wanted. Now, what I would do different if I did it next time is I would probably alternate and do every other round as an increase and test that out, because it started to get to where it wasn't quite tall enough back here, but I was getting really pointy 70s vibe peaks here. So I sort of stopped because this was going to be what showed more, and it's not quite as big of a collar in the back as I would like, but I didn't want it to get any more pointy and kind of come out, and have 70s bat wing collar points. So that worked for me. The other thing that I did is I wanted to have the pleats right here, or the whatever the side slits. And so when I seamed from the arm down, I just stopped about 2.5 inches up so that I could have the side slits. I kind of like the side slits in the shirt. I just think it gives a little bit more room, a little bit, it makes it look less wide at the bottom, in my opinion. A lot of times I notice that because I have to make something big enough for a larger breast size, sometimes it ends up making me look pregnant at the bottom because it kind of ends up looking like this. And so if I put the side slits in there, then I just feel like it hugs a little bit better and it doesn't look quite as bloomy, maternity style, for lack of a better word. So I went ahead and put those in. Now, the final thing, and the thing I was kind of struggling with last week, was the points. I have a really narrow shoulder base and always have. And so a lot of times if something fits me in the body, it's going to kind of come out wider on the shoulders. Now, the pattern designer, hers had a lot more positive ease in it, so her shoulders came down further naturally, which probably prevented a little bit of that peakiness. Because I went with a narrower shape overall, I ended with the pagoda type kind of peaks in my shoulders. So I started doing a sleeve on here, and I didn't know exactly what I was going to do, but I just started going around. I did a couple of decreases underneath just to kind of pull it down a little bit. I actually did them on top first and realized that doesn't work. So then I ripped it out and I did them on bottom. And I just did a couple of small decreases on the bottom to kind of pull the sleeve down a little bit. And then just kept crocheting until it got as wide as I wanted it. And then it naturally sort of curled up. And I was going to try and block it to prevent the curl up. But to be honest, I really dig the curl up. I think it adds a lot of extra kind of vibe to it, and it just gives it a nice sort of casual look that I was totally going for, and I think I just nailed it. Now, one of the things that I'm really actually very proud of is that on these patterns, if you know much about when you're working a pattern that has a neckline like this, you generally will do work from the bottom up and then do half of the shoulder, one shoulder, with continuing the yarn, and then you tie on and do the other shoulder with an additional piece of yarn, basically. So this side is all one piece of yarn without stopping, and then you tie on and do this side. Now you can see what happens here is that these are like a certain width, and then as it gets up here, because these are shorter rows, the color patch gets a lot thicker. And you probably wouldn't notice that if I didn't point it out, and if you did, you just would think that it's a style choice. So it totally works. But what I had to do was I had to get it so that this kind of this solid section of color at least somewhat matched up. So I literally took off enough of the yarn until it looked like it was at about the right place, so that when I tied it on, it looked like the same. And I think it looks great. I think I nailed it. Now, the one thing I don't think I nailed, and it's not a big deal, but you can see that my stripes do not match up. My intention initially was to get the stripes to match up, but then I was thinking, well, I want the back panel to be a little bit longer, and if I do this, and then, I just got too far into it that I was like, it's just, whatever it's going to be, it's going to be, and I'm going to just work with it that way. So at the end of the day, most people don't notice that color change, that the stripes don't line up, and I'm totally fine with that. I love this top. This is going to be one of my everyday go-to grab pieces. Now, it is supposed to be hand washed only, but it has a linen blend, and I've washed it once just to kind of block it, and it's already softened up a lot. So it is a dream to wear. I'm going to be buying me some more of that Hobie Linen Rococo yarn because it's pretty amazing. And they have the multicolors like this, and then they also have some solids. And right now they're actually on sale. I am not sponsored. Hobie, if you want to sponsor me, let me know. I'd be happy to take it. But I'm currently not sponsored, so that is a totally unbiased, unsolicited opinion on the Hobie Rococo linen yarn. I am drinking, I have a Soda Stream. Again, nothing sponsored. A Soda Stream, so I carbonate the water, and then I bought a long time ago these mixes that you can mix with sugar or any sweetener you want. So you're basically making your own. And they come in different flavors. So like this one I think is sarsaparilla. It has root beer. It has red cream soda, all kinds of different flavors. And you mix your own sugar into it so that you can modify how much of that sugar or what type of sugar you want to use. Which to me, I don't like using the artificial sweeteners. And I'm okay with xylitol, but you can't find xylitol flavored sodas. So I just make my own. So this one I think is sarsaparilla, and I use a little bit less sugar and a lot less syrup. So it's not a full strength, it's more like a seltzer water strength. So yummy. Okay. So once I finished this top, I was kind of like, ugh, okay, what am I going to work on next? It's not, to me, I hate thinking about fall and winter wear because even in the fall, I'm generally not wearing what most people are wearing. These are the kind of tops that I wear in the fall. It's too hot here. It just, ugh, it's miserable to think about wearing sweaters and cardigans and things like that, and hats and scarves and cowls. It's just not something that I get into. So I was trying to figure out what I wanted to make next. And in the meantime, I was sort of playing around with, this is Hobie Friends Cotton Silk. And it is a very soft cotton because it has that silk in it. It's a DK weight. And I started playing around. This is the print version, and I believe the print is currently discontinued. I don't know if they're going to come back out with it. Frankly, I like things in multicolors instead of solids. I don't know why. That's one of the appeals to me of getting to crochet my own garments, is having things that are in multiple colors instead of just everything being solid. So this is actually in kind of creams and blues and greens, and I was really looking forward to making something with this. And I actually had tested it for this top, and I wasn't getting gauge, so I scrapped the idea for this top. I picked it back up. I tried about 3 or 4 different gauges with this, and I was getting gauges, but once I sort of started working on it, I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that right now. I don't feel like doing this pattern right now. That's like, I may have pinned these patterns a year ago and was totally in love with them, but right now I just wasn't feeling doing that pattern. I thought I had landed on one that I was like, yes, I totally want to do that pattern. And I started working it up, and I don't know, because this is a cotton, it feels a little bit more, even though there's the silk in there, it's a little bit more rustic feeling. Not rough. I don't mean rough at all, but it has more of a bumpy vibe to it. It's not smooth like you would expect silk or something like that. It just wasn't giving me a vibe that I felt like working with right now. It felt like it was going to be too warm. Even though it's cotton and silk and only a DK, I just felt like it was going to be too warm for me right now. So as much as I wanted to use this yarn now, I said, you know what? I'm just not feeling it, so I'm going to put it aside and move on. In the meantime, I did do a couple of quickies, and I made a couple of these stars, and I just used some, no, this is not Lily. This is Big Twist, which is now discontinued, cotton, in the Americana, Faded Americana or something like that. And I mean, my star kind of turned out a little wonky, but it's okay. Basically, what this is I use it in my kitchen this is a coaster pattern. I'll link to it in the notes below, but it's a coaster pattern, and I just use it to put spoons on, like my coffee spoons, like after I've stirred my coffee, rather than setting it on the counter and getting the counter all dirty. I just throw these down, and then I can change them out for the season or whatever. I can throw them in the washer and clean them up, and it's just a little bit easier than constantly having the counter to be wiped in that spot. I don't know, something silly. It's a little decorative. Gave me something to work on in the meantime because I was like getting fried on thinking of things. And then yes, I did actually work on some granny squares for the granny square blanket. So I got 4 of these done and blocked. I actually blocked all of them and sorted them all out. So now I know exactly how many I have and how many I still got to do, which is probably wasn't a good thing, to be honest, to try and figure out that I still have way more of these to do than yeah, that's going to be an ongoing project. So I did make some progress there, and I can look at that as a win because I haven't worked on that in weeks and weeks. So, and it was always supposed to be that project that when I have nothing else to work on, I can work on that. So for that reason, I guess it really served its purpose. I am in no big hurry to have it done, so there you go. The only issue is I don't have enough yarn, so I will have to go back out and buy more. So hopefully the colorway doesn't get discontinued. Now let's talk about the Southwest jacket. She doesn't have a name yet. I haven't come up with one. I am almost done with the first sleeve. And that is what I've got so far. So if we look at the size sleeve here, where if I block it, I'm probably pretty close. But this is all of the yarn I have left on that skein. And I don't think it's going to be enough to do another couple of rounds, which means I have to tie on, which means I'm going to need a third skein. And I'm not looking forward to that. I was really hoping I could get away with just doing 2 skeins. Even if I use the cuffs from the jacket and don't do cuffs, I just don't think it's going to be enough. So I'm trying to decide and make a decision. I love the stitch pattern that I used here. It's really just a pretty simple double crochet mesh alternating with 2 rows of single crochet. But I think it really brings out the Southwest feel of this yarn, and I think it looks really lovely. My thought was to add some embellishment to this, maybe some red and teal and brown leather strips somewhere, like maybe woven in and out of these. I don't know yet that I'm going to do that, but that was definitely one thought process that I had on this. So this is at least making progress. One sleeve, 90% done, and I have the skein for the other sleeve, but I think I'm going to end up having to have a third skein for this, of which I'm not going to end up using that much. So that's kind of frustrating, but it is what it is. We make it work. And I did finally today land on the project that I am going to be working on for my personal satisfaction, and this is by Tinderbox Farah. There we go. And it is the Daphne Henley tee. I am going to use the Knit Picks We Crochet Gloss, and this is in the colorway. Oh, it had a fun color name. Gunmetal. No, not gunmetal. Robot. Robot is the name of this colorway. So I have 4 skeins, which amounts to 880 yards. The pattern says that it calls for 891 yards, and it's a little cropped for my personal preference. So I'm trying to decide if I buy another skein. I have 3 skeins of a raspberry color that I could sort of mix in somehow I also have a lot of cotton. This is actually a merino wool silk blend. And I have some cotton of the same weight that I could like a dark gray that would look really good with this. But I think I'll probably end up buying another skein just so that it all sort of is a little cohesive. And maybe I'll see if they have a darker gray, because I think the darker gray would actually, like the raspberry would look good, but I don't think it's as, I can't wear it as much because it's like you got to wear it with just the right thing. Whereas at least if it's a gray and a dark gray, I could wear it more universally. So I might end up picking up another one just to be on the safe side. We'll see. The pattern is interesting. I've never seen a pattern written this way. I'm not sure I'm necessarily a fan of the way she lays out her patterns, because she has like a portrait, or not a portrait, a landscape style of the page. And she has each row in a different graphic block. And it's just, I don't know, my brain doesn't like the way that it's laid out. I'm sure that it works amazingly for some people. For me, it just feels too artsy, and it is not functional that way. She did suggest using a 3.25 millimeter hook. I do not own a 3.25 millimeter hook. I didn't know that 3.25 millimeter hooks existed, but I did do a gauge swatch with a 3.0, and it worked up just fine. I got gauge with that. Hopefully it continues to work up just fine, but everything seems to be hunky-dory with this. This is my gauge swatch, and yeah, so we will get started on that. I'm hoping that this is a lovely yarn. It feels, considering that there's silk in there, it still feels a little bit on the rough side. Maybe it'll soften up a little bit with wash. We'll see. Yeah, so there we go. I think I have busted through the phase and started kind of coming out on top again. We did reschedule our Flagstaff weekend for this coming weekend, so hopefully next week I'll have some reports on going up and enjoying the cool weather and getting to hang out with some amazing crochet buddies. On Monday, I have another crochet group that I host here locally in the North Phoenix area, and we'll be getting together for the first time in quite a while. We're actually going to be getting together at a bar, so I'm keeping my fingers crossed that that's not going to be too loud and it's not going to be too dark. Because previously we hosted in my house, but the last one we had scheduled, that was when my mother went in the hospital, so I had to cancel it. And the one before that, I ended up getting a migraine and I had to cancel it. So at least if it's in a bar, the gals can get together regardless of whether or not my life says, yeah, you're not playing today. So we're hoping that location, and because I kind of live out in a rural area, there's not a lot of coffee shops and places like that we can just get together and hang out. So fingers crossed that works out well. We'll see, and I'll let you know. So tell me, have you ever felt like a slug trying to find its way through yarn barf? Let me know in the comments below. And Farah, get us out of here.